All right, so the first thing that we're going to do in just a moment is we're going to install this NPM package, which is Express Sessions. Now, before we do that, let's just talk about what all this is. I did mention to you yesterday that right now, basically, when you go into this blog, it's set up that anybody can go into it, anybody can type anything into it they want, etc. We started to put in some extra functionality where you best, hopefully now you've got to log in before you can do anything. All right, but once you log in, there's no sense or reason, so to speak. What we eventually want is when you log in, we want your post to show. Does that make sense? So you log in, and I'm not saying you won't be able to look at other ones. I mean, that's we'll see. All right, but right now we want to install this package, and when you look at what's in here, there's a lot of stuff, and we're not going to use most of this, but I wanted to take a minute and go through it. All right, so as it says, it's Express.js Mongoose session storage. What we want to be able to do is to have the server know it's you. All right, basically, for lack of better words. And what's going to happen is you're going to get a session ID when you log in. All right, and if you don't know what that means, it's really not that important a thing, but it's this long, hairy butt number that's got letters and numbers in it. We'll look at some of it in just a bit. So we're already doing this, so that's no biggie. But when you look at this, really the only thing that we're going to need in here is this. Now, don't type that in, because you could put anything after secret you want to put in. You could literally put in inside of secret the word secret, and that's totally fine. All right, and that's basically is some kind of a secret key that you want to put in. Now, what you're saying, all this in here, this is all cookies and other stuff that's in here. And so notice cookie max age. I don't know how many seconds that is, but it's probably like a year or something like that. All right, and then this is just an example of how it can be used. Well, we're not going to be doing this really through Mongoose, so don't worry about this stuff. But they show some examples in here, and when you go down far enough, and most of them look pretty much the same. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to just grab this, and remember, you can either use npm install or npm I, it doesn't matter. All right, but let's grab that to begin with, and then let's go in here. And I don't have the app running right now. All right, so I can just paste that in. Whoops, paste that in. So npm install, again, or npm I, express hyphen sessions. Okay? Shouldn't be a very long install, I wouldn't think. All right, and again, we're getting some stuff about deprecation and whatever, and don't worry about that. This is still a very popular way of doing things. You know, again, they don't have the downloads like it says here because there's other ways of doing it. We're going to look at some of those other ways as we go on. All right, but for now, we're doing things, for lack of better words, kind of the easy way. All right, it may not always seem that way, but that's kind of what we're doing. All right, so after we do that, we can go in, and I can go in at least and start up the project. So npm run dev. I'm not going to, run it yet. I just wanted to get it up and running. Okay? All right, so with that said, I've got my stuff open up here, etc. And the first thing I want to do, as you'd probably guess, is I want to come into my server JS file because I have to come in and add here const express sessions equal require express sessions. Now that new line I just put in there, line 8, that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. Once we add a package, we just have to make it available to our program. All right, and again, as we talked about, can't use the minus sign. This is a typical way of doing it. I'm not even saying it, you could call it Ralph. It really wouldn't matter. But we've been adhering to the concept of whatever we're putting in here is pretty much the same name as what we're requiring. All right. Then on the bottom of our app use here, this is what we have to put in. So app.use express session, but there's a little more to it than that, fortunately, unfortunately, whatever you want to say here. All right, but we've got to give it that secret key. All right, so you put in secret. You can put anything you want, and literally what I put in here was secret key. Oops, like that. And again, what that does is that it will sign and encrypt the session. All right. Now we're going to do something, and I guess we don't need the semicolon here. That must be why it's screwing up. Okay. All right. So this, I've added this right here, line 8, and I've added this right here, lines 17 through 19. Questions on that? All right. Now I wanted to show you something before we go on, and that is what I'm going to do here quickly is I think the program is up and running. It is. So I'm going to right mouse click on the program, and I'm going to go to inspect. All right. And then when you go to inspect, there's, notice it says here elements and it says console. You can see that, right? And if I click this double arrow, there's a thing over here called application. All right? And that's the one that I'm going to check or click or whatever. All right? Why? Because what we're getting into right now is we're starting to talk about cookies. And if you go under application, you'll see that one of the things underneath there is cookies. All right, and if I click on here right now, it has something set up, a Connect SID. So it has a cookie that's been set up for what we're working on. What do I mean? Look on the screen if you would, please. And you can kind of see this. And see how big this is? That's the session ID right there. You see that? So again, if I did that too fast or whatever, let me just go through the whole process again, okay? From right here, feel free to try it with me if you want to. That's fine. You don't have to. All right? But all I'm going to do here is I'm going to refresh the program. So it's up and it's running. And I'm going to right mouse click here. I'm choosing, oh, that's interesting. Okay. Whatever. But I'm going to right mouse click and I'm going to choose inspect. Underneath here, if your application isn't showing right now, just click the double arrow and it'll show. And then under application, you want to go down under storage and go to cookies. And what it should have when you click the down arrow is the cookies for the domain you're at. Now, if you're not running it on 8888, yours, of course, will have a different number on it. And that's fine. And if I click on that, all right, then you can see here, this is my session ID. All right? So that got created as soon as I basically restarted the program, okay? And let's see, I'm trying to look here. Express session is, okay, it's giving me an error, so why would it be giving me an error right there? Oh, no, I didn't spell it wrong.
I think some of them might not be plural or...
Oh, you're right. It's express sessions. Thank you. You're right. I'm wrong. So
That makes sense.
let's just change that. On here, that should be express sessions. See that? Put an S on there. My error. And I copied it down wrong too. So I'm going to save that. Go back to here and see if it's going to start everything back up again. Still breaking. All right, app.use requires yeah, I know it requires a middleware function. Okay. Server.js line 17, which of course is right here. Well, I copied it down exactly as I did it. Use express sessions, secret key. Don't know why that would be giving me an error. Because that is correct. You don't need all of that other stuff that's in there. You can put it in, but we don't need 90% of the stuff that's in there. That's what I gave it. Well, I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at the documentation. Oh, maybe that's it. Express session? Only when I've written it like this, then. Let's try that.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, the answer is always, the answer is in the code. So if I screwed up, it's in the code. All right, so I changed that. So let's see first if it brought it back up then. No longer bundled with an Express. It must be installed. It was installed. Fresh sessions. See, I think it has to be this in here. That's what makes sense, is this, because we're telling it to use that middleware. So I would think it has to be this, but it gave me an error when I did that. Like that. And that is no longer grayed out. It means we're using it. That should be correct. No, I didn't say it is correct. I'm saying it should be correct.
Do you need the dot expression after the express session?
Shouldn't need
Or
anything.
dot session?
No, we shouldn't need anything after that. We've already got that. Shouldn't be dot express. That doesn't make any sense.
What errors we got when we installed Express Sessions?
Did you get errors when you installed it?
Yeah,
I did.
the
Maybe.
same ones you did.
All right, so let me try it again. Let me npm I express hyphen sessions. See if this time we get errors or not. These are warnings. Those are just deprecation warnings. Those are not errors.
What are the vulnerabilities?
It's all internal stuff that gets put in or that does not get put in. They're letting you know that since that's deprecated, there might be other stuff in there that basically is as well.
Okay.
Oh my God. You know what? For now, let's just continue on, okay? All right, because like I said, I'm tired of getting hung up on these things that, it's not that they're not important, of course they're important.
Something.
All right,
I installed Express Session, not Express Sessions.
so let's go back and look at the documentation. So I brought up sessions, and there's session. Oh, that looks much better. Because there's an example that they had in here that you are correct. That's the right one. Because that's the one that I wanted to show you. Okay, so let's do this the right way. Let's first come in to here and let's uninstall what we just installed. So npm uninstall express-sessions, like that. All right. Clear now install npm install express dash session. Okay, clear. And I'm going to take a look at the documentation again. So notice app equal express app.use. All right, and they've got their So they called it session, where I called it express session. Okay, it doesn't matter one way or the other. I'm going to leave it mine as express session. Now I should be able to come in here, and with this, let's make it express session and make this express session. So make sure you change those two things on line 8 there. Save. And now this is express session, like that. So let's do an npm run dev. Again, it's giving that message that it's been deprecated. All right, thank you, sir. All right, good. Okay, now just to show you, and we've already looked at this, but I want you to see it again, and that is this. Now with the program should, so there it is. All right, and you can see, as I said, we've got this in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here just so you can see it. I want to prove this to you. So I'm going to right mouse click on here. You don't have to do this. I just want you to watch me do it. I'm going to right mouse click and I'm going to click clear. So all my cookies are gone. All right. And then I'm going to come back to where we just were right here. I'm going to take these 3 lines and I'm going to comment them out. Oops, not like that. I'm not. There. I'm going to comment them out. I'm going to save the program and I'm going to go back to my program again. And I'm just going to, for lack of better words, I'll just come in here and restart it. So I'm just, there, boom, I just refreshed the page, okay? Now I'm going to again go in and do an inspect. And just like we just did, I'll come over to here, I'll go to application, I'll go down to cookies in here. And now what you'll notice, if I move this over, I have no cookies. So that's what that code in there did, was it applied a cookie. And the key ingredient of applying that cookie is it created a session ID. And that's what we need to be able to communicate with the server, so the server knows who we are. All right? And again, if I just take what we have right here, and I'm going to uncomment this, that's why I said you don't have to do it. I just, whoops, jeez Louise. I just wanted to show that to you for lack of better words, okay? And if I do that again here, and save, and then go back to the program, and close this, and refresh, nothing magical happens, except what should happen is going back here now, just like we just did. So going back to application, you can already see, all right? And SID is session ID. So it says when we connected, it created a session ID for us, all right? That was a long explanation, a lot longer than it probably should have been. And again, Mr. Breeding, thank you for the help. All right. So let's go in now, and when we log in is when we want to make this association. Does that make sense? All right. So let's go into our login user controller file. All right. So under controllers, I'm going to find my, I don't need this server file open right now or the nav bar open right now. So I'm going to, under my controllers, I'm going to find the login user controller. All right. And I think you all remember this stuff from yesterday. And we said yesterday, if we had a match, that meant we put in a valid username and we put in a valid password. And that's great. That's exactly what we wanted. But we want to put in one more line here. We should do this line first. We don't want to do the redirect and then do this. So I'll put a comment here that says assign user ID to the session. All right, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Request dot session dot user ID equal user dot underscore ID. That's making the association. All right, and we are only doing that. We are only doing that if everything worked. All right, so I added the comment. I added a comment there on line 12, but the new line is line 13. Everybody's with me? All right, I'm going to save this. And Then I'm going to go back because I want you to see exactly what's happening here, okay? So I'm going to go back to the home controller. You could do this. You don't have to. I'm just going to put in a console.log line temporarily, and then I'm going to comment it out because I want you to see what's happening here. So in this home controller line that we have right here, all right, just before the res.render stuff, so right here, I'm going to put in a console.log, and I'm just going to add req.session. As soon as I'm sure that it's working, I'm going to comment that line out. All right? But as soon as I'm sure that it's working, okay? All right. So I just added that new line 5 in there, okay? All right. So I'm going to save this, and because I want to make sure I'm starting with new stuff, so to speak, I'm stopping the app, and I'm starting the app up again. All right? Okay. And it says that it's up, and it's running. Okay, that's good. That's all good. So I think everybody'd agree. We just started a new session of this running right here, and it says app up and running on port 8888. Okay, so I'm going to come back into the actual project itself, and I'm going to attempt to see if I can log in. Now, if you yesterday, if you don't have a new user and it's not functioning, it's probably not going to work. But I created a new user yesterday that I called Jeff with a password that I called Jeff. Okay? So I'm going to come in for my login page here, and I'm going to put in Jeff. And I'm going to click login. And it worked. It's telling me that basically I have a crummy password. All right? But that's cool. And I don't want to save this. But it did push me to the home page, which is where I want to go. But the key part is this. See what I got here? It's showing me that it created that cookie, and the key thing is it set up my user ID with that. So it's got a bunch of stuff in it that it just set up. That's what I wanted to show you. Okay? Now, I don't want to keep doing that so that every time I make changes, that's going to run again. So I'm going to comment that line back out, but I just wanted you to see exactly there what was happening. All right? All right. So I'm going to go back to that file, and I'm just going to comment out the line. We had a long talk the other day in the first year class, and I mentioned that it's always different if you go to work for a company and you are the sole programmer. All right, I know people who do that. They work for smaller companies, and they put out a ton of comments in their code. They may even do program runs and put them in their code to show what something should look like, okay? And other people tell me they would never do that because what if somebody gets into your code, breaks in, so to speak, and does things they shouldn't do? I don't know what the best answer to that is. I mean, if you work at a company, I've done this before, where I have the equivalent of console.log statements, and I'll leave them in there and just comment them out like this. That way, if I know if something breaks and I go back later, I know where I can go back and print stuff out. But like I said, everybody, with the way they feel about that kind of stuff is different. So I've got my home controller. I'm going to do a file save and close that. I've got my login user controller. I'm going to do a file save, and I'm going to close that. All right. Then I want to open up my new post controller, which is right here. All right. Now, why? Because right here, remember the idea behind this is it's going to open or bring up the create page to allow me to create a brand new post. All right. Well, that's fine, except for the fact I don't want to be allowed to create a new post unless I'm logged in. All right. So we have to just add a little bit of code right here. So we're going to add if req.session.user_ID. All right. Then we want to do this, and again, we're going to get to that create post thing, so don't worry about that. If that really bugs you, in fact, I'll do it. I'm just going to comment it out for right now. All right? That's no biggie. All right. Now, and that's fine, but if we get down to here, it didn't work. Does that make sense to everybody? If we get down to right here, because if it worked, we rendered the create page. They're gone from here. But if we get down to here, it didn't work. What does that mean? Well, that means they're probably not logged in. So we're going to redirect them to the login page. Just like that. Does what I just did and said make sense to people? All right. So far, if you look in here, and I'm going to do a file save, and I'm just going to close this one for now. I don't think I need any of these open for right now. But right now, when you look at what we have done, we've got several controllers. We've got 2 models. Under views, we've got our layout, which has got our common views. Plus, we've got about 5, 6, whatever it is, pages in here. All right? One thing we haven't done that much on has been the middleware. Now, we have some validation middleware in there, but that stuff that's in there is only checking before we do a new post. All right? But we want to write some more middleware that basically is going to check, and if the user either types in a wrong password or if the user types in, the wrong username, etc., we've already started doing something like that. But when we call this find by ID type of thing, if there is an error, we just want to redirect them to the home page. So a lot of the code that we're going to be putting in now is defensive code, for lack of better words. So I'm going to come into middleware right here, and I'm going to create a new file under my middleware directory. And you can call this whatever you want. My name is kind of big, but I called it Auth user middleware.js. And that's short for authenticating the user. Does that make sense? All right, and it's not much. It's probably about 7 or 8 lines. So the first thing we do is we need access to that user model that we've been talking about for the last couple days. All right, like that. So we need access to that. So that's whoops, I got a period there. Fat-fingered. All right. And then we're just going to do our typical module.exports equal. And we're going to have 3 things: the require, the response, the request, the response, and next. All right. And again, I'm not asking this, but if I said, hey, why do we put a next in there? You should now all know that the reason that we're putting that next in there is because this is our middleware. It isn't system middleware. So to make sure we go on to the next thing, we'll have to call next at the end here. All right? Okay. So what do we want to do? User.findById, REQ, session, user ID. All right, so what we're attempting to do right there, this is middleware that we're going to put in when we are attempting to log in. Did you all hear that? All right. We're going to be making some checks, and I don't know why it keeps doing that, but okay. And when we do that, it's going to return one of 2 things. It's either going to return an error, or it's going to return user, which means error means it didn't work, and user means it did work. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. So I'm going to come in here and say if error, or maybe there wasn't an error. If there's an error, it's going to typically be some kind of a system error. But the other kind of error is they put in an invalid username. And if they put in an invalid username, that user property that's right here is going to be false. So we're saying not user. All right. So if those are the case, I'm just going to do a return res.redirect, and I'm going to redirect them to the home page. Like that. All right. And either way, I want to, if they haven't been redirected, it worked. So I'm just going to call next. That should be it. Now, I went over that kind of quickly, but does what we are doing in there make sense to people? All right? We are doing some checking in different places. This is our checking that we're adding over and above to any other checks that are being made. All right. Now, this is called, again, Auth user middleware. So remember that. So I'll save this. I'll leave it up for right now. That's fine. All right. And the next thing that I want to do is I want to bring up server.js. You know this already. We've done this several times. All right. And where we're adding our stuff in here, okay? So in other words, where we've come in and we've done consts and we've added this and this, I don't have to, but I might as well stick it right underneath the other middleware one that I already have. You don't have to do that. All right, but this new one we just called, I think it was Auth user middleware. All right. And was it Auth user middleware? I think that's what it was, right? I'm going to double check. There it is. Auth user middleware.js. Good. So that's right. Oops. And we've got that. All right. Now, it's great because we've got one more line that we've got to add in here. Okay? We want this middleware right here. You may remember this the other day. We had a problem. It was because of the ordering I did. But this line of code right here, we're not doing anything to it, but I want you to realize this validation middleware that you see there in blue only is going to run on /post/store. Just so you know that. That's the only place on which it's going to run. In much the same way, I'm going to grab this new Auth user middleware, just grab the name, and I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. All right? And then I want to go down to my app get, and I want to go down first to my posts new. All right? Right here. And again, I'm going to add that because I'm telling it I want it to do some authentication before I allow you to put in a new post. All right? And I'm going to also do some authentication before I allow you to store a new post. All right? So what is it checking there? Well, remember, it's checking to make sure that there is a person to do something, and if there's not, it's not going to allow it to happen. All right? Now, in order to test this, which is what we want to do now, I'm going to come in and do a file save. I'll leave this open. I'll leave this open. Just to be sure, I'll do a file save here. But to test it, the first thing I want to do, if you look up on the screen, we have to, for now, I have to come in here to application again and get rid of this cookie. All right? And I'm going to let the system create another one for me. So I just got rid of that cookie that's in there. All right? Now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to refresh the screen, all right, which basically, for lack of better words, should start my program up again, okay? So, since I refreshed the screen, I should not be logged in right now. Does that make sense to everybody? I got rid of the session ID, etc. So, when I come in here, all right, I want to click the new post link. See that? I want to click this. If this works, what we just tried to do, I shouldn't go anywhere. I'm not logged in, so I shouldn't be allowed to go to the form where I can put in a new post. Does that make sense? So let's see. And I stay right where I am. All right? Now, what we'll learn about on Monday is how we can also set up messages for stuff like this. So you can come back in, and up here or in here we'll have a message that'll come in and say something like, you must be logged in to create a post or something like that. All right? All right. Now, when the user is logged in, so if I come in here and I click login, and I come in here and again do Jeff, okay? So when I do this, right now, notice it is still showing me the login page, and it is still showing me the new user page. Those should not be available to me right now. Why? Because I'm already logged in. When you probably have done this kind of thing before too. If you log into something, you'll see a log out, which we're going to make in just a little bit, but you don't have stuff like this. All right, once you're logged in. So that's what we want to do. So to do that, we're going to create another middleware function. All right. So I'm going to come into here. I'm going to close the one that we've got, the auth user middleware, which was to authenticate the user. All right. And I'm going to come in here, open this up, and under middleware, I'm going to add another one. So I'm going to right mouse click and choose new file under middleware, and I call this one, kind of long, user not authenticated middleware. .js. Now I know that's kind of long. Let me move that over so you can see all of it. Maybe that's too long, but I try to make this stuff as descriptive as possible. All right? And this is going to be short again. It's only going to be about 7 or 8 lines. So there it is. And I'm going to start putting the code in there. All right? We don't need, right now, we don't need access to anything. So we're just going to go and do our module.exports. And we're going to have, since it's our stuff, we'll have our request, our response, and the next, just like we've been doing. All right. And if there is a user ID, so why is it giving me that? Well, I think it's because we haven't finished typing yet, but if request.session.user_ID, all right, so if we have that, oh, thank you. There's an equal sign there. All right, that's why there's an error. Okay, so if there is a user ID, I'm just going to do a return res.redirect to the home page. Okay? Like that. And next. Like that. That's the whole thing. So in English, what this is saying is it's going to we're going to associate this with our call to that in just a moment. All right? And what it's going to say is, okay, basically, for lack of better words, if we all are already logged in, we shouldn't be seeing those other pages. All right? All right. Now, as we've been doing, so here's, I'm going to do a file save, and I shouldn't need this anymore. It looks correct to me. But in my server.js, I've got to do the same kind of thing that I just did. All right. In other words, I want to come in here, and where I'm adding my middleware, I've got another one now to add, and that one again was called user not authenticated middleware. Okay? So I want to come in here, and this one will become user not authenticated middleware. All right, move this over. I don't know how if I can get rid of that or not. Well, let's see. Let's put on word wrap. There. Can you see this? This is one line, but I turned word wrap on. All right. All right. So we've got that. We want to require that. Now, again, it's kind of a long name, so I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. We're going to put this in 4 different places. Down on the bottom here, all right, we're going to put this under auth register, down here. So this auth register, all right, then underneath that, users register, then underneath that, auth login, and underneath that, users login. So you can see that now in almost everything except these two routes right here. Everything else, well, I guess these first three, I should say. Other than these first three routes right here that you see, we are calling our own middleware before we're actually calling the controller. All right, so we are basically setting up a communication mechanism, or whatever you want to call it, between the two. All right? Now, we're not done yet, because what we'll want to do now is we'll want to literally go in and hide some stuff. All right? And how do we do that? Well, it's not hard at all. I'm going to close this server file for now, and I'm going to come back in, and in our views, layouts, what we want to hide is in our nav bar. All right? So we want to hide the new user and the login links. And we want to do that, all right? We want to do that if the user is logged in. Well, how do we know if the user is logged in? We're going to look at that in just a minute. We haven't actually done that yet. We'll do it in just a second. But if you look up here, okay, then what I want to do is, let's see. In fact, let's do that first, because it'll make more sense when we do that. So open up your server.js file. We're going to come right back to this. Open up your server.js file, okay? All right. Then where you've got all of your middleware that you've added in here, we've got all this app.use. We're going to add another one here on the bottom. But before we do that, you may or may not know of this. So I'm going to type in a line of code, and let me just explain to you what it means. By putting that distinction in there of global, this variable is now available program-wide. Does that make sense? I want to check to see if you're logged in all over the place. Anytime you attempt to change screens, I want to make sure that you're logged in. Does that make sense? All right. And then we add some middleware after this. Now, because I wanted to mention something to you. We could try to add it right here, but we get an error. We wouldn't get an error when we typed it in. We get an error when we run the program. We don't want to go and actually use this thing until, look on the bottom here. Where is our app use? I guess, yeah, we can do it here. See this one? Remember we started with this today and we said now we've got a session ID? That's why this is down below that. Because we can't check to see if you're logged in until we know whether or not you got a session ID. All right? So underneath this, we'll put in about 3 or 4 lines of code. It's going to be another app.use. And this will say basically for every page. That asterisk means for every page right there. All right? So for every page, again, it's our middleware. So it's going to again have a request, a response, and the next. Hopefully you're starting to at least somewhat see a little bit of a pattern here. All right. And what do we want to do? Well, we want to say logged in equals request.session.user ID, and then next. So put that in, and then we'll talk about it, all right, in just a moment. So the new lines were 23 through 28. In English, if we've logged in, this has got a value. If we've logged in, that's got a value. All right? So it's either going to be null because we haven't logged in, or it's going to have a value. But either way, logged in will hold either our session ID, all right, or it'll hold null. If it holds null, well, then we want to keep the user from doing something because they're not logged in. And if it doesn't hold null, we want to allow them to do things because they are logged in. All right? Hopefully that concept makes sense to people. I'm going to save this. I don't, I'll leave server.js open because we keep going back to it all the time anyway. But in here, in my views layouts, I'm now going to go back to navbar. All right? And I want to make a change here. Okay? Now, I am expecting, supposing, whatever you want to call it, all right, that right here, okay, you've got a thing here that's for post new for a new post. I'm expecting that everybody has that. All right? I only want you to be able to do that if you're logged in. I only want you to be able to create a new post if you're logged in. Does that make sense to everybody? All right? So we're going to put some code in here that's going to assure that. And it'll say, if logged in, you know this because I basically threw this at you for how long and how many times. All right? Let's see. All right? And I'm going to take this. You don't have to do this, but I'm going to take this and tab it over one. And then I'm going to end this. What do I mean when I say I'm going to end this? I'm going to put in my ending curly. All right? So right now, or now, I should only see the new post if I'm logged in. If I'm not logged in, I shouldn't see that link. Does that make sense? So we're using conditional processing to show or not to show something. All right? Now, if I'm not logged in, then I want to show these two things. Does that make sense? Because either I've got an account but I'm not logged in yet, or I'm somebody brand new. Does that all make sense? So I'm going to grab this line I put up here that says, if logged in, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to put it right here. But this has got to be, let me hit enter. This has got to be not an if logged in, this has got to be if not logged in. Oops, great. So if not logged in, all right, don't know how I got the curly there. Get rid of that curly if you have it. If you got a curly here, get rid of that too. All right. So I'm again going to come in here and I'm going to tab these over. Now I'm going to grab this line that we've got right here that ends it, and I'm going to put that right here. And let's talk about this in English, oops, as far as what's happening here. All right? So in English, what we're saying here is, hey, if the user is logged in, we should now show them new post. If the user is not logged in, we won't show them the new post. We'll always show people home. That makes sense. All right? But only if you're logged in will you see the new post designation. If, on the other hand, you are not logged in, and only if you are not logged in, we will show you the login and we will show you the new user. Does all that make sense? So I'm going to save this. I'm going to go back to here. Clear. You might notice. Okay. Now let's log in. Looks like it, it's still showing those, and I should be logged in. All right. Well, that ain't good. Let's go back and check the code. If not logged in, show this. That is correct. I'm making sure I didn't miss a curly or something else in here. If you're logged in, it should show you this. Well, let me try this then. We do a file save. Sure, and I know I saved before, but I'm going to refresh. In fact, let's stop the run and start the run all over again. So I now have home, I have login, and I have new user. All right, so I'm going to come in and I'm going to log in. In fact, let's double check that. Home, login, and new user, okay? I am not logged in. So I've got login and new user. Make sense? And I've got home. After I log in, ideally, I'm going to have these, but I really shouldn't have these anymore because I should be logged in. All right? So let's go back. I'll go to login. Jeff, login. I don't know why it's still showing me those. All right? But we're going to figure it out anyway. It's 1 o'clock. Let's come back at 1:15, please. We don't have much to go, just so you know.